Hey everyone, it's Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make burial-style atmospheres. So I'm going to be giving away the project file and samples from this video and the MIDI and all that kind of stuff in the description for free, so make sure to pick that up. And yeah, let's dive in. So the first layer that I have here is this little background noise. It sounds like this. So this is that first one that you probably heard because of those little clicks at the start. And yeah, this is just like a simple background noise. The key here is that it just has a really, really nice texture to it. Like if you hear this, yeah, it sounds really, really good. And that's the key that I'm going to keep coming back to throughout all of this is like, it's just really a matter of finding things that sound cool. You can see I have no processing on this, and on most of these I have no processing. It's just because they're really cool sounding sounds that you layer together to create something sort of unique and, yeah, just more interesting. So this is the first one. And another thing I want to touch on with this as well are those little clicks. So, stuff like that. So when you hear this, it's pretty cool because what it does is it adds these kind of like random things in the background of your song. And if you've listened to Burial, you know that sort of like this unpredictability or like this randomness of sounds that come in and out throughout his tracks are one of the real like cornerstones of his style. So it's an important thing to do. So the way that you can achieve this, and I'll show you more with some of these other noises, is like just try recording your own noises. Like if you live in a city, go walk around with your phone mic and just like record the city. Or if you want, I mean, even if you live in like the suburbs, you can still do this. And what'll happen is you'll pick up all these random little things because obviously, you know, like, okay, if you're walking past somebody and they cough or something like that, that's just something extra that gets in the background of your noise. And like I said, adds cool little incidental things like this. So, yeah, it's definitely important to find noises that have stuff like that. And like I said, the key with this layer is just to have a nice texture. So, the next thing I have here is this vinyl crackle, which sounds like this. So this is made, as you can imagine, with a vinyl crackle sample. There it is. And then all I did was I put it through this EQ8, which is kind of just like a bandpass, the way I've set it up. And so the reason why I did this is because with the vinyl crackles in Burial's music, they tend to have this really, really specific texture where they're like kind of darker sounding and a little bit more mid-range bass. So that's what I did here. This isn't perfectly in the mid-range. It's kind of in the high mids to like low highs, I guess. But it serves that purpose. Like you can hear, it has that kind of like darker texture where the crackles really come out. So yeah, this is pretty much like another key with this is with the vinyl crackle. I think too often people just, you know, drop it into their track and think it's good. But I really recommend playing around with EQ because there are a lot of really cool things you can find in vinyl crackle samples. It's similar to, like I was saying, like the ambient background noise. You get like little incidental things that are interesting. So one more thing you'll notice here is that this is only actually 2 bars, and that's another thing with the vinyl samples is that you don't really have to have them be too long because since it's, you know, like if you have a musical part, like if you have this bass line, for example, to go from this last note to the first one, you can very clearly tell that that's, you know, the end going into the start. With the vinyl crackle, because it's kind of just all a bunch of noise, it doesn't really matter if you just loop it over and over. Like, I could honestly probably just take this part and do something like this, and it would still work fine. Like, you wouldn't notice it. Especially, like, even when it's on its own, you don't really notice it. But especially when you're hearing it in the whole track with all these other detailed noises going on, you don't need a whole long thing for your vinyl crackle. Like, 2 bars like this totally works. So the next sound that I have here is this little cassette noise. It sounds like this. So this is just another layer of noise. There wasn't a lot in like the very high end. Like if you listen to all these other ones, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot going on with those really high highs, and I think that's pretty important too. So that's the purpose of this. So it's like I said, it's like layering and just strategically putting layers together in a way that makes them all work really well and build something new and unique. Now, another thing with this layer that you'll hear is it does kind of have some incidental sort of like background sounds like I was talking about. Like those little like kind of low pitch things. So that's another benefit of this. Like when you use these kind of noises, you just get all this cool stuff. So yeah, so that's the cassette noise. That's just on there for another layer. And then I have another background noise, which sounds like this. So this one, I actually know what this one is. This was a recording I had done. I think I was in a library. Yeah, I was in a library. And I just walked around, like I was saying before, I just turned on the mic on my phone and just started walking around and recording stuff. And you can hear, like, there's all this cool stuff. Like, I think you can hear the walking in there. Which is fine. That's in a ton of burial tracks. But you can also hear all the little random things, like people talking in the distance where you can't really hear what they're saying. Like, all that kind of stuff. Again, it's just adding more and more texture to your track. So that's that. And then finally, I have one more background noise. It sounds like this. And so this one, as you can tell, is serving a very specific purpose. It's really just filling in like the kind of low end. Something that I think also people kind of miss when they try to do these sort of like background noises, and especially like in reference to burials music, is that they kind of miss out on the low end. Like a lot of times, I mean, a lot of people just drop on like a vinyl crackle and that's it. But like, you really need to layer it out and think about the whole frequency spectrum. So this one in the low end gives it like this nice kind of rumbly texture that I've heard in a lot of burials music. Like I think he does what this one is. I'll explain in a second. But well, I think like he'll use like thunder sounds or like the sound of rain or like, you know, stuff like that that kind of tends to have that like resonant, rumbly low end. So that was what that is. This one in particular, I believe actually was a recording I did on my phone, but the phone was in my pocket, so it was just doing all that kind of like that stuff. And it's cool though. Like I said, it kind of sounds like thunder or like a storm or something like that. But it just, again, it helps fill it out, and it makes it feel more realistic. Because it's like, when you hear noise in the background, like if you're in a building or something, and you hear a bunch of background noise, you're not just going to hear this. And you're not just going to hear this. You're going to hear a whole big layered palette of sounds that is created by all the different things going on in that building. So if you're trying to make a realistic, organic texture for the background of your music, you got to do the same kind of thing. Just layer together a ton of real-world sounds. So then the next thing that I have here is this little pad sound that I made with Operator. It sounds like this. So all this is just kind of a simple like high string. This track, this little thing here is in F minor, so it's just playing the root note of F. And yeah, it's just like this pad. I've heard this in a lot of burials music. I think actually he uses synths more than people give him credit for, and more than people think. Like I've heard actually that he does have a few synths, like hardware synths. And I think that using synths can be really useful for this. Sorry about that. The camera cut there. But like I was saying, using synths for this style can actually give you kind of a different edge, especially using like an FM synth like Operator, where you know you can really control like the harmonics and just really shape the sound yourself. I think to just use samples would be kind of slighting yourself with this style. So that was what I did here. I just made this simple thing with some FM. We have two sine waves, or actually a sine wave, and then this one where I drew in some harmonics. Excuse me. So if you don't know in Ableton, if you take like just a sine wave like this, if you start drawing in these things, I believe the one I had drawn was like this. Yeah, you can add harmonics to the sound, and what it does is then essentially FM synthesis works off of harmonics. The harmonic content of this sound, or the harmonic content of oscillator B, is essentially shaping the harmonic content of oscillator A. So putting more harmonics and more sort of detailed harmonic combinations into each other can create different things. So this is where FM synthesis can come into play, because you can use it to create so many different textures and timbres and just all these different things that you can't really get with like just a saw wave or a square wave or a sine wave. So yeah, using some FM synthesis for this is definitely recommended. And yeah, that was what I did here. So I have this little waveform where it was a sine wave with some added harmonics, and then I have the second one, which is just a sine wave, and that is up +6 on the, or that's up to 6 on the coarse pitch. So that's what's kind of making it really high pitched. Here it is without that. And then yeah, you can hear obviously that adds kind of like those high overtones. So then after that, I put those two through this bandpass filter and Operator. So here is what it sounds like before any effects. So that was the sound just coming out of the oscillators. After that, like I said, I added this bandpass filter, which definitely sort of tames it a bit. I was trying to just make it a little bit more chill. Like, you wouldn't really want this, even with some reverb in here, because it's not really got that like mellow vibe that fits with this. It's a little bit too harsh and digital. So I just added the bandpass filter, and yeah, it's just filtering off some of that high end. After that, I added this auto pan, which has the phase on 0, so it's only affecting the volume. And all this is doing is it's just kind of giving it that fluctuation. If you listen to it without this, it's just too steady. But this gives it some randomness. And this is what I recommend. Like, if you want to use synths in this style where it's like super intricate and, you know, texture and all that, I recommend doing stuff like this, like little volume modulations or automations or however you want to do it that can, yeah, just add a lot of movement to your sound. So then after that, I just have a bit of reverb. And there's the sound. It's really pretty simple. I went into quite a bit of detail there, but this is just a really simple sound. It's just like a drone. So after that, I have this little vocal sample here, which sounds like this.
Who are you? Why don't you come to me?
So this was just a vocal sample. I actually believe this is one that Burial has used before. But yeah, it's just a sample of somebody talking. You can hear there's a bit of background noise with it. So this is another thing that's kind of key to the atmosphere of Burial's track. So these little like vocal samples where they're kind of like weird and a little bit obscured. To sort of go along with this, I've added a bit of echo here.
Who are you?
Which on that one, to be honest with you, doesn't sound the best. But on this one, I think it helps to sort of
Why don't you come to me?
weird and obscured, like I was saying. So yeah, like using echo and finding kind of noisy samples like this. I think this one is from like a TV show or something where there was already a bunch of noise in the background and it was just regular dialogue. So it's not some super clean recording of someone talking. It kind of has a little bit more texture to it. So yeah, that's that. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. As far as like placing those in your track, this is actually something I did used to struggle with because I used to not really know where to put them. To be honest with you, I just try to put them wherever. It's kind of cool because with these, they don't have to be rhythmic, so you can just drop them in your arrangement however you want. So that's kind of what I did here. Just as long as you don't make them too frequent, I think you're fine. So then after that, the final thing I have here is this respace, which sounds like this. So it's just playing this thing that's in F minor. That's the key of the song. And then, yeah, I'll show you the synth sound. So basically, like I said, it's a respace. I have 2 saw waves, an operator here. Second one is detuned a little bit. And then those are going into a bandpass filter. So usually for these, I use a low pass. But I like to use a bandpass sometimes too because you can still get those like low. Like you can hear there's plenty of low end in there. It's not like high pass by any means. But you get like a lot more control with it when you start opening it up. Especially going into that saturator, you can see you get some cool stuff. So it can be kind of useful. To be honest with you, this was a little bit extra. Like I said, you could totally just use the low pass, but I thought it would sound cool, and I wanted to kind of show you something. So that was that. And then I just have that whole thing going into the saturator, which is a little bit extra as well. Like to be honest with you, you could get away with just that. But I put the saturator on. It just kind of beefs it up. It adds a bit of harmonic content, so it's bringing up some of that mid-range and stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much that. So thank you again, everybody, for watching this tutorial. You can get the project file and samples from this video in the description for free. So make sure to go pick that up. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you thought of this video in the comments. You can check out my social media, which is on screen right now. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.